let's get into these NCAA championships. So I got a chance to actually go out to Eugene and cover the NCAAs over the past 4 days last week. Came back to New York for the New York City Grand Prix, but I want to make sure that y'all go over to Citius Mag, check out This Week in Track and Field. Myself, Chris Chavez, we break down everything that went down over the past week in track and field, including some of the highlights from the NCAA championships, specifically talking about some of the athletes who have some potential to make the USA Olympic team in just about a week's time. But today I'm going to be diving in and talking about almost all of the sprints, jumps, and hurdles and some of the major highlights from the NCAA. So let's dive right into it. And I think one of the top performers, if not the top performer of the meet, was McKenzie Long from Ole Miss. She completed the sprint triple, which is a very rare occurrence for any athlete at the NCAAs. Yes, we saw it last year with Julian Alfred. We saw it a couple years ago with Cambria Sturgis, who at least did the 100-200. But this was a huge performance for McKenzie Long, and she started things off in the 4x1, where Ole Miss actually in the heats, they moved to number 5 all time, running 42.22 seconds. Then they finished off in the finals, again, getting the win in 42.32 seconds. So easy way to start off the NCAA championships. She then followed that up in the 100-meter dash. 10.91 seconds in the heats for McKenzie Long. That proved that she was in impeccable form going into the final. Well, 10.82 seconds for the win in the 100-meter dash final. Slightly windy, plus 2.2 meters per second, but clearly she was going to be on pace to win the 200, which is exactly what she did. And in my opinion, this was probably the performance of the meet for women on the sprints, jumps, and hurdle side. 21.83 seconds moves her to number 2 all-time in the NCAA, only behind Abby Steiner, who's run the best of 21.80 seconds. And it also moves her to number 25 all-time in the history of the 200 and number 10 American, equal with Evelyn Ashford. I mean, if it wasn't clear that McKenzie Long is a serious threat to make the US Olympic team in both the 100 and the 200, these performances clearly point in that direction. Now, I actually spoke with Gabby Thomas just after her 100-200 double at New York City, and she said that she was excited to race McKenzie Long and to see her at the Olympic trials, with everyone vying to make their spots on the team. Now, the 200, I think she has a slightly better shot. Yes, both the 100 and the 200 for the women is kind of wide open, but I would say the 200 is slightly better considering just the landscape of the women who might be in contention when talking about performances like these, right? Abby Steiner, she's been sitting out a little bit, might be dealing with some slight setbacks. Kayla White, she also hasn't competed outdoors, I think, this year, and she made the team last year. You also have a couple others like Brittany Brown. She's very much in contention. Tamara Clark, she's very much in contention, but it's not nearly as deep as you might think, considering the landscape and considering some of the other women who have made the 200-meter team to the Olympic Games. But you do have in the 100, Sha'Carri Richardson, clear favorite probably. Then you have a bunch of other women who are very much in the mix. Aaliyah Hobbs, Tamari Davis, Tamara Clark, right? There's so many women, Melissa Jefferson. So many women are definitely in the conversation for the 100. So I think McKenzie Long has a better shot in the 200. But that's talking about Olympic trials. We'll get to that at one point. Huge shout out to McKenzie Long and everything that she was able to do at USA's. Also want to give a shout out to Brianna Lyston. She got 2nd place in the 100-meter dash, but seems like she's ending her season. She had her kind of hamstring or her leg at least wrapped up or with a sleeve or something like that, both in the 4x1 and the 100. So hopefully she's able to get healthy depending on whatever the setbacks that she might be going through are. So we're going to see her, hopefully next year, but huge shout outs to Brianna Lyston. Let's move over to the women's 400-meter dash. You can argue, in my opinion, this is probably the race of the meet and one of the best races we have ever seen in NCAA history. Arkansas women, as we've seen, went 1, 2, 3, 4. We have never seen any school do that in any event. We've seen 1, 2, 3s, not 1, 2, 3, 4. And they did it in impeccable fashion. Nickisha Pryce, 48.89 seconds. NCAA record, Jamaican record, number 13 all time in the history of the women's 400-meter dash. I mean, this was an amazing performance for her to become the first NCAA athlete to go under the 49-second barrier. But she was joined by all her other teammates. You're talking about Kayla Brown, 49.13 seconds, equaled the previous NCAA record, and she was born on December 31st, 2004. So she just misses the U20 world record by one single day. One day, but huge shout outs to Kaylin Brown, just a freshman at Arkansas. Huge future ahead of her. Also, Amber Anding in 3rd place, 49.59 seconds. Very likely going to be on the British team going to the Olympic Games. And then finally, Rosie Effion, 49.72 seconds for 4th place. She actually made the US team last year in the mixed relay, so this is a great performance, kind of putting her right in that conversation. Both Kaylin Brown and Rosie Effion very much in the conversation for the women's 400-meter team to the Olympic Games for the United States. But Nickisha Pryce, huge shout out outs to what she was able to do, and she is going to be a serious medal threat. But Arkansas going 1, 2, 3, 4, well, clearly they were going to dominate the 4x4, and that is exactly what they did. Not only did they win the 4x4, but they obliterated their NCAA record. 3:17.96 seconds, almost 3 seconds off their previous record, which they just set at the West preliminary rounds. And this performance is the 10th fastest 4x4 time in the history of the event. Not the 10th fastest country, the 10th fastest performance. The only performances ahead of this are from the United States, Soviet Union, as well as the German Democratic Republic. And 2 of those countries don't even exist anymore. So amazing performance for the Arkansas women in both the 400 as well as the 4x400 meter relay. Now, as we look forward, we got the women's 400 meter hurdles. This was another kind of under the radar performance that I really think has some huge implications as we look forward to the Olympic trials, potentially the Olympic Games as well. You're talking about Jasmine Jones from USC. 53.15 seconds makes her number 2 all time in the NCAA, only behind Sydney McLaughlin-Levroni's 52.75 from all the way back in 2018. This could really put her in the conversation as a threat to make the team for the 400 meter hurdles, specifically when talking about the United States. Of course, you have Sydney. She's a clear favorite on that front. But then I would say second best right now is Anna Cockrell. She's been super consistent. Then behind her, I think it's a wide open field. Yes, we saw Shamira Little. She got another medal, silver medal at the World Championships last year, but she hasn't been looking as good in 2024. You also have other athletes like Adilila Muhammad, right? Britton Wilson, she's no longer going to be competing. She probably would have gone for the 400 anyway. But then you also have someone like Rachel Glenn, who finished 3rd place here. But again, Jasmine Jones, she's kind of in the driver's seat as potentially the 3rd best American as we look towards the Olympic trials. And this 53.15 actually makes her, I think, number 31 all time in the history of the 400 meter hurdle. So this was not a light performance. Also, like I said, Rachel Glenn, she finished 3rd place. In the heat, she ran 53.80, so she's still kind of in the conversation as a potential threat to make the USA team. But 2nd place, Savannah Sutherland, competes for Michigan. She ran 53.26 seconds. Personal best, moves her to number 5 all-time in the NCAA, and is a Canadian record. She was the NCAA champion last year in 2023, but comes up for 2nd here. Definitely one to keep an eye out for. She's going to be going to the Olympic Games representing Canada. Now, as we move forward, I want to give a quick shout out to Ackelia Smith from Texas. Long jump, triple jump, double. Nothing too crazy in both, events. 6.79 meters in the long jump, 14.52 meters in the triple jump. But she did kind of give a really good shout out, just, the representation for Jamaican jumping, where we've only seen a couple jumpers over the past couple years between Kimberly Williams, we've seen Shanika Ricketts. They've really been dominating in the triple jump. And Ackelia Smith is kind of rising up as a next generation of talent when talking about Jamaican jumping. And she actually made it to the World Championships last year in Budapest, where she made it to the finals in the long jump. I think she finished 11th place and then made it through the qualifying rounds in the triple jump. So she's going to be one to look out for as we get towards the Olympic Games. Now, finally, on the women's side, I have to give a huge shout outs to the women's high jump, where this was a low-key immaculate performance and immaculate competition across the board with the top 3 women. You're talking about Rosie Boa from Illinois and representing Ghana. She jumped 1.97 meters for the 1st place, but she actually tied for 1st place with Elena Kulichenko, who competes for Georgia and represents the country of Cyprus. She managed to jump 1.97 meters. Also in 2nd place, just behind them on countback because of the misses, we saw Temitope Adeshia, who represents Texas Tech as well as Nigeria. She jumped 1.97 meters for 2nd place, and all 3 of these women broke national records in the high jump. Immaculate performance. That moves all of them to number 4 all time in NCAA history. Not too far off that NCAA record. Again, huge performance for all these women in the high jump. Had to give some very big shout outs. Now let's move over to the men's side, where for the most part, we didn't see as fast of times when talking about the sprints, but we did see some good hurdle performances. Let's dive into that men's 100 meter dash though, where Louie Hinchliffe, representing Houston, he came away with the 100 meter dash win here, 9.95 seconds. He competes for Houston, but he represents Great Britain. He's going to have a pretty good shot to potentially make the British team. It's going to be tough. You have Zarno Hughes, you have Jeremiah Azu, you have Prescott. I think Hughes as well as Azu, they both got slightly injured, so not sure their status. But listen, Louie, he put himself in a good position to potentially make the Olympic team for Great Britain. We're going to see how that actually plays out, but definitely keep a lookout for him. And of course, I have to shout out Carl Lewis. I got a chance to speak with him just after, Louie got the 100 meter win, and he clearly was like, yo, stop coaching from computers, aka internet coaches. Stop talking, right? Stop telling Louie to fix his start, even though he doesn't have a quote unquote great start. He's able to execute, and he's able to get him prepared to make sure that he's able to win a race like this, and he's able to perform week after week. Carl Lewis literally said, back in the day, I wasn't getting a great start, right? I was known for my second half, but guess what? I'm not gonna fix my start. Y'all can fix your finish. I'm winning all the races. But that's just Carl Lewis. Check out the interview on Citius Mag's YouTube channel. Definitely a huge performance for Louie Hinchliffe. Also, Favour Ashe from Nigeria, representing Auburn. He finished second place in 9.99 seconds. He did kind of pull up with about 5 meters to go before the line. So who knows? He could have won it, but Louie got the win there. Ashe is going to be, representing Nigeria at the Olympic Games. Huge performance for Ashe. And also, I do want to close out with this men's 100-meter dash, just noting that 7 of the 9 men who are running in this final all represented countries other than the United States. So just showing the dominance of some of these other countries that have been on the rise and kind of taking some spots away from the United States. Now, it's not to say that the United States isn't consistent still, right? We still do see a lot of American athletes, but it really just showing some great performances across the board from athletes around the world. Now, moving on, the men's 400-meter hurdles. This was arguably the race for the men's side when talking about the sprint, jumps, and hurdles. Caleb Dean from Texas Tech, 47.23 seconds. One of the fastest times in history, makes him number 2 all time when talking about the NCAA, only behind Rai Benjamin's 47.02, which he ran back in 2018. Again, he moved himself to number 11 all time in the history of the 400-meter hurdles. And what he did is put himself right in position to make that Olympic team for the United States when going to the Olympic Games. Now, it's very challenging where you have someone like Rai Benjamin who is significantly ahead of the field, right? He's running a different race. But you do have some other athletes like a CJ Allen, Trevor Bassett, Cleve Rosser, right? There's a lot of guys who are in the mix, but I think Caleb Dean really inserted himself as kind of the, strong number 2 to, make the Olympic team behind Rai Benjamin. We're going to see how things play out, but after that, Carson Warholm, Benjamin, as well as Dos Santos, they're like, again, in a completely different race, but huge shout outs to Caleb Dean and what he was able to do here. 47.23 seconds. Whew, man, this was absolutely insane. Now, want to talk about the men's 4x4, where this was a crazy race. Now, nothing too crazy in terms, well, on the clock, we did see Texas A&M, they got the win, 2 minutes, 58.37 seconds, moving them to number 4 all time in the history of the NCAA. Arkansas came up for second, 2 minutes, 58.83 seconds, number 6 all time in the NCAA. But the splits that we saw from some of these guys moved them into the history books with those times. Ahmad Robinson from Texas A&M, he managed to split 43.20 seconds on the anchor leg. That moved him within the top 10 all-time of 4x4 splits. But that wasn't even the fastest split. On the anchor for Arkansas, we saw James Benson II, 43.18 seconds for the anchor leg. That makes him the equal 4th fastest 4x4 split in the history of the event. You're talking about, matching up with guys like Quincy Watts, like Jeremy Warner, right? This guy, not many people kind of had him, quote unquote, on their radar in terms of, one of the fastest in the NCAA. Yes, he has performed well throughout the season, but 43.18, that is insane. The only faster NCAA split that we've ever seen was actually by Michael Norman, who ran 43.0 seconds all the way back in 2018 at the West Regional. So listen, amazing performance on the 4x4s, Ahmad Robinson, as well as James Benson II. Huge splits that we saw from these guys. Now, those are some of the major highlights, but do want to give a couple quick shout outs to the men's 200, Cheikhna Troy competing for Penn State. He's going to be competing for Cote d'Ivoire when we get to the Olympic Games. You also saw Christopher Morales-Williams completed the indoor-outdoor double in the 400. Nothing too crazy in terms of time, 44.47. Men's 110-meter hurdles, Darius Luff from Nebraska, he got the win in 13.19 seconds over Jacoby Tharp of Auburn, who had run 13.18 seconds in the heats just as a freshman, but he did run 13.20 in the final. Also, women's 100-meter hurdles, Grace Stark getting her first 100-meter hurdle title after various different injuries, 12.47 seconds for the win there. Men's long jump, JC Stevenson from USC. Triple jump, we saw Salif Main from FDU. Men's high jump, Romaine Beckford from Arkansas. Men's 4x1, Auburn gets the win, and not even running with Favour Ashe. So huge performances across the board from the NCAA. Again, I haven't spoke about the NCAA so much through the year. I've kind of been focusing on the professionals, but like I said, I was out there for NCAAs, got a chance to really chop it up with so many of these athletes, really highlighting their amazing performances and celebrating, their accomplishments all throughout 2024. A lot of these athletes, like I noted, they're competing for other nations. They're likely going to be competing at the Olympic Games. If they're competing for the United States, they're going to be, trying to to get their spot on the Olympic team next week in Eugene. So let me know what you thought about the NCAA championships this year. Did you think it was one of the, best championships that we've seen? We did see the, viewership numbers where I think over 1.7 million viewers over the course of 4 days. But do you think that the performances lived up to the hype? Last year was an absolutely insane year. Was this equal? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, y'all.